Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the MMA Plug presented to you by Mile High Sports. We're coming to you from the number 38 down here in Rhino, presented by Volo. If you have the opportunity to check out the programs or the recreational activities that Volo has to offer, I definitely encourage you to do so. Lots of things going on that they have out there in the mix. So again, if you have the chance, make sure that you check them out. And also come check out the number 38. It is a tremendous sports bar down here. There's TVs all the way around. They've always got food in the mix. And yeah, it's a great spot to come and watch some of these winter sports where Colorado is absolutely crushing it right now. As far as the Broncos go, they gave us a little bit of a cardiac episode the other night. Overtime game, all the way down to the wire. But Nick Bonito, man, he's running another campaign for putting his name in the hat for a potential Defensive Player of the Year situation. Along from that, I just want to give a shout out to our man Cody Rourke here from the Mile High Sports Network, crushing it with the Broncos coverage, whether it is the What the Football, the Good Morning Broncos, all those segments right now, tremendous out there and what he's doing. In the winter sports world right now, you've got the Nuggets off to a top 5 start so far in the season right now. If you're not seeing, and I'm full disclosure, I'm not a basketball fan. I don't like watching the NBA. Can't really stand it for the most part, but game recognized game and appreciating athleticism and true greatness out there. If you are not appreciating what is going on with Nikola Jokic right now and just the incredible work that he's doing in all facets of the game for basketball, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Danny, he's like the leader in every major statistical category right now. And he's been the leader basically over the course of like the last 5 years.
Yeah, I haven't checked recently, but he was on top for most categories.
Yeah, I mean, it was through the Thanksgiving break, I guess the last infographic that I saw, he was like the top dog for major things. And for a big man to be able to see the floor that well and to make the passes, the assists, and to score at the rate that he can as well, on top of rebounds and everything that a big man does, it's just absolutely tremendous. So again, Nuggets fans or just fans of athletics and peak performance, I encourage you to check him out a little bit there. Usually the most of what I see is the clips that our guys here at Mile High Sports share, or it's when I'm at Texas Roadhouse on Sunday and they're playing on a Sunday and the Sunday night football game sucks. So I watch a little bit of that on the side there. Now, as far as the Avalanche go, they are on a historic pace right now to start the season. I mean, this is truly something incredible from them. Again, talking about peak performance, I'm not going to sit here and act like I know a whole ton about hockey, but I know what whipping some ass looks like. And I know what, one of the games over Thanksgiving break, when just sitting there with the family watching at home, when they're putting up like a baseball score number, they're scoring like 6-7 goals in a game. That's absolutely insane. So again, Colorado winter sports right now are absolutely crushing it. If you have a chance to come and watch them, there are ample TVs all over the place down here at the number 38. You can see what we're working with here with the Mile High Sports Studio. There is also merchandise available on demand that we have. We've got the Bronco Barrel Man, a legend from the Mile High City. You've got the Jokic Joker tee that's available. There's also a couple other novelty Mile High Sports logo options that are out there. So come and check it out. It's a great place to be. In relation to the CU Buffs, the season is now done. They are pretty brutal. I guess that's an easy way to put it. They didn't have a great season. I think it was pretty underwhelming considering they had one of the top draft picks that were signed, and just some of the rhetoric that we got from the coaching staff at certain points. And I think that there's a lot more of the CU faithful that are having much less faith in Coach Prime. Says that he's a great motivator. 3 wins on a season. I don't know how much motivation that is. Again, he had a lot of off-season health issues, but yeah, you wonder if you're able to retain a guy like Juju or some of these other guys in the mix, just amidst some of the controversies or the grumblings that are going on up there. We've got a couple of the coaches from staff that are now going on to other spots. How does that impact the Buffs going forward? Keep it locked for our Mile High Sports crew for more information on that. And I know that we're not a big CSU Ram football station here, but got to give a shout out to my Rammies because they had a massive coaching hire over the last few days when they signed Jim Mora Jr. Got him out of UConn. That's a huge signing right there, folks. I mean, he's a guy who's had a lot of success wherever he's been. And I think that, you got to have a little bit of patience with the Knights of Green and Gold. They're talking about at the presser that he's going to go out there and be a contender for a Pac-12 championship, Pac-10, whatever the conference is now. Don't really follow as tightly, but also making a run for the playoffs and whatnot. It's not going to happen right away. It's not. But give him some time, give him a couple of years to go through the recruiting process and start to build up his staff, bring in his guys. I think that a more realistic expectation for an evaluation for what a Jim Mora Jr. might bring to the table is give it 3 years. Give it 3 years, especially going to a newer, more prestigious conference, and see what they're able to do there as they are exiting the Mountain West now at this point. But all that to be said, keep it locked here on the Mile High Sports Network. Give them a like, share, and subscribe wherever it is possible to keep up with all of that coverage on the Core 4 Sports, as well as some of the collegiate action out there. And again, come down to the number 38, pick up some merch. It supports everything that we do here. We are greatly appreciative of that. Moving along to the Colorado Rundown, we've got events every weekend leading up through Christmas. We have an event this weekend for CJJC. That's going down at the Stampede. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later in the program, previewing some of the matchups. We have that going down. Again, that is Saturday the 6th. It is going to be an afternoon show. Be there around noon. We're going to be getting it off with the early prelims and running all the way through. We've got UFC vets on the card. We've got world traveled grapplers. We've got a bracket, so a little event within the event going on. Some incredibly talented teens that are both going to be on the show or making their return to the show, I should say. So, yeah, it's going to be a great show this weekend. Come out and check out some grappling in the cage. You won't regret it. The following weekend, there's a couple of events going down. You've got Sparta holding a show. We've also got our 5280 Muay Thai show that is Colorado's only all-exclusive Muay Thai promotion that is going to be happening at the Stampede as well. That's a Muay Thai matinee. We're cracking the doors at 12. First fight's at around 1. Come out, check it out. The Art of 8 Limbs. Pure entertainment right there, folks. For those of you who are maybe a little bit more on the casual side of MMA, or those who maybe have said from a couple of the fights on the big scale in recent history, well, I don't like watching crotch sniffers, or I don't want to see people just laying on people. Well, come and watch Muay Thai. It is all action. It is high paced. You're going to see some guys go out there and let the Art of 8 Limbs fly, and you might just see some highlight reel knockouts in the mix. We've got Colorado Combat Club closing out the year on December 20th. That is going to be also happening at the Stampede. It is going to be a matinee show as well. We're cracking the doors at 12. Fights are going to be starting at 1 o'clock. It's a loaded card. This might be one of our bigger shows throughout the year. We've got a bunch of vets of our cage that are returning, as well as some newcomers. We've got some people flying in from out of state to fight on the card. Please come and check that out. We're going to give you a little bit more of an in-depth breakdown and preview of that show as it grows closer in the next couple of weeks. We're going to circle it back here from the UFC Qatar show. And that's really, we're going to talk about one fight from it, simply because most of you have already moved on from that news cycle. It was a couple of weeks ago, but we want to talk a little bit about the main event. That was Arman Sarukian, who took on Dan Hooker. It was a fight that Arman should have won. He won in pretty convincing fashion, I would say. But once again, we gave Dan Hooker a puncher's chance going into the fight. But in that sort of scale of, levels, if you will, Arman is the number one contender in the division and has been for a little while. That's a fight that he should win. It's a fight that he should go out there and have a decisive victory in, and that's basically what he did. A little bit more on Arman and the entire lay of the land at 155 later on the program, so put a pin in that. We're going to circle it back here in a little while. Transitioning now over into this weekend's preview. Going to talk a couple of shows here, folks. But first, we have to talk about UFC 323. You have a rematch of Merab Dvalishvili, the current champion at 135 pounds. He's taken on Petr Yan. Petr Yan, a former UFC bantamweight champion. Petr infamously lost his belt in disqualifying fashion with the illegal knee to Merab's best friend, Aljamain Sterling. Aljo, met some criticism from the acting performance, if you will, or what many people accused him of during that fight. But nevertheless, I think that fight ending in the DQ, because he did commit the act, he did knee him illegally, that put Petr Yan in a little bit of a weird mental space, in my opinion. He had a couple of up and down fights from around there, but then had the loss to Sugar, then fought Merab, and he didn't get mopped by any means by Merab, but at the same time, Merab is a very tough puzzle to solve. He was able to stuff a lot of takedowns, though, but still at the same time, Merab's relentless pressure is just so tough to deal with. Skill for skill, I think that Petr Yan is one of the most talented guys at 135 pounds. There's absolutely the chance that we could see the title change hands this weekend, but I think that right now, the confidence that Merab is operating with, Merab is a much better fighter than when they fought the first time. Merab's striking has gotten so much better, which I believe goes hand in hand with him being such a juggernaut and relentless force when it comes to the takedown threat. It opens up his hands a little bit more. He's unorthodox, but Petr Yan's his hands are so quick. Does he catch him on the way in? That's the same thing that we've said for a couple of these other matchups for Merab, and they haven't been able to figure it out just yet. Does the intel from sharing the cage for a previous fight aid Petr Yan? And at the same time, does that intel that Merab has from fighting him previously benefit him? From an entertainment perspective, shout out to a faithful listener of the show who we had a conversation about this the other day, and Marcus Vargas, he said, if Petr wins, we might have one of the greatest trilogy fights to ever come from the bantamweight division, or at least so far within this era. Who knows? What do you guys think? Would that be a trilogy fight that you'd be interested in, or would you want to see Merab close the frame out? You could let us know. Moving along from that, we've got another title fight going down in the co-main event slot. You have Alexandre Pantoja. He's taken on the challenger, Joshua Van. Joshua Van has had a pretty quick ascension to a title shot in relation to what his entirety of his career is. The kid is 15-2. He's only been training and fighting MMA for about 5 years in total, from what he's reported. Just a couple of years ago, he fought here in Denver on a Fury card, to which he did pick up a victory, and then he's gone into the UFC. He fought here in Denver again against Charles Johnson. That fight didn't go his way. It was a third-round stoppage loss, but he was able to rally from that and get hot and go on another win streak. Has a Fight of the Year contender from this past International Fight Week at the end of June against Brandon Royval, which got him this title shot opportunity. Yeah, you can say puncher's chance because his hands do have some pop. But I think that when we've talked about certain champions who are not afraid to make the business decision, like we did a couple of weeks ago with Islam Makhachev to Valentina Shevchenko, or in the summertime with Hamzat Chimaev defeating Dricus du Plessis, Alexandre Pantoja is not afraid to grapple to be able to give him the highest probability of victory. He embodies the ethos of my job as a champion is to walk out of here with the same 12 pounds of gold wrapped around my waist that I came into this fight with. I also liken it to, we've seen some of these fights where Pantoja has a very distinct advantage in a particular department. And, I'll love to my brother, my former roommate, Alex Perez, but I can very well see Pantoja taking that exact approach, walking him down and taking his back right away and finding the submission. I don't think that Joshua Van has the ability nor the capacity to grapple at length with Alexandre Pantoja. Aside from Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson, we're seeing one of the greatest runs of a champion at 125 pounds that the division has seen. The lineage has seen a couple of champions with the title change hands from DJ to Pantoja currently. Throw in a couple of fights in the mix with Figueiredo to Brandon Moreno in the mix, Henry Cejudo as well. But when we're talking about total defenses and the reign of, call it dominance, Alexandre Pantoja has been incredible with what he's done as a champion at 125 pounds. Speaking of Brandon Moreno is going to be fighting in that feature slot. He has taken on Tatsuro Taira. Tatsuro Taira does a lot of his training here in Denver. Gets his work in a lot of rounds over at high altitude. This is a tough fight for Moreno. I think that Tatsuro Taira is a guy who is absolutely the future of the division, and he's already encroaching upon that top contender status. How does the high-level experience and the champion status of former champion status and experience in high-level fights benefit Moreno? I mean, that's a known commodity. Brandon Moreno is going to show up, and he's going to bring it. But Tatsuro Taira seems to level up every time that we're seeing him at this stage. He's got one loss in his career. That was to Brandon Raw Dog Royval. In some other fights that he's had, I mean, he's gone in and he's had convincing performances against tried and true veterans. Is this a breakout performance for Taira? Is this the performance where Taira starts to insert him into that title contention conversation where maybe there's another fresh opponent that comes out in the mix for Pantoja? Oh yeah, one more circle back from the Qatar card. Just speaking in relation to potential new contenders for Pantoja, should Pantoja beat Joshua Van, Kyoji Horiguchi made his return and did so in emphatic fashion. He beat the hell out of a Dagestani. Kyoji Horiguchi was one of those guys who he's been one of the best guys in the world outside of the UFC. He had a successful run in the UFC, left, pursued other promotions, got paid a lot, and is now back. Tatsuro Taira and Kyoji Horiguchi, those could be two new guys that are right up toward the top of the division and potential title challengers. Moving along from that, we've got a fight in the bantamweight division. It is the retirement fight for Triple C for Henry Cejudo, the youngest ever U.S. gold medalist wrestler. He has taken on Peyton Talbot. I'll be honest, I don't really like the matchup at this point for Henry Cejudo. But it's a big name for Peyton Talbot on his side. You know, this is kind of the way of the land. We cannibalize our older crop or the older guy for the younger guy to get put over. Cejudo's last fight, I think he, with the eye poke situation, didn't really want to go out that way. So this is one last chance for him to try to go out there and get his hand raised on the way out. Though he did say in his media day that there is one other fight that he would entertain should it happen or should it be offered, and that would be the Brandon Moreno fight. There's been some bad blood between them throughout the years. They were once really close, especially following that season of The Ultimate Fighter where Brandon Moreno became basically an understudy of Cejudo, and then what Cejudo calls him turncoat, whatever you want to call from it. But there's some heat between the two of them, and Cejudo said he would, if it's offered, he'd love to do it on Cinco de Mayo. Hey, from a promoter's perspective, you have hit the W's there. You've given your who, your what, your when, and your why is well known. I'm not mad at it, but I also don't know if Henry Cejudo could ever make 125 pounds again. Just something to point out there. Next fight on the card, you're going to have some big boys who throw heavy hands. You have former light heavyweight champion, Polish Power, Jan Blachowicz, taking on Bogdan Guskov. Guskov is a rising contender in the division. Jan Blachowicz, obviously, he's on the back nine. I mean, he sees the 19th hole on the horizon. But Power is the last thing to go. And if he's able to find his shot, especially connect with that left hand, it's going to be a tough time. But will the speed and the athleticism be an advantage? The youth, will that be an advantage for Guskov? You could let us know. Hit us up on social media or me on Instagram or on Threads. That's at Comments from the Peanut Gallery. Next fight, headline in the prelims, you've got Grant Dawson taking on Manuel Torres. It's a 155-pound matchup. Grant Dawson is a guy who has a suffocating grappling style. A lot of people have called him the American Habib at times. That all to be said, it is a little bit limited in terms of what he does. He's a tremendous grappler with suffocating pressure from the top. On the feet, a little bit more of a liability. If you can keep him at range, put him on the back foot, you're going to have a little bit more success. Though it does just have to be noted that in all this time, he's only saw 2 losses in his career. I'm sure that Manuel Torres is going to come out and try to bring hellfire at him. Styles make fights. We've got another matchup following that in the lightweight division between Terrence T-Rex McKinney taking on Chris Duncan. Both guys who love to finish fights. Both guys who are allergic to going to the scorecards. We've said it many a times, pretty much with every fight over the last couple of years with Terrence McKinney, he's kill or be killed. He's either going to go out there and he's going to have a finish, and especially he's a sprinter. He has a ton of first-round finishes. His last fight was like a 20-second guillotine or something sub 1 minute with Slava Claus, where he guillotined him from the mount. Has the fastest knockout, or his UFC debut, his fastest knockout in UFC lightweight history against Matt Steamroller Favola. The kid is a sprinter. Chris lights out Duncan, though, at the same time. That guy has power in his hands, and he's willing to go to war. He's willing to stand and bang, and he will take the shots to be able to try to find his. But I just don't know how many of those power shots you can take from someone who has the horsepower of Terrence McKinney. Next fight, we've got a Denver fighter in Macy the Future Barber taking on Karine Silva. This is the first fight back in quite some time for Macy. You know, from all things that I've heard, it's been a great camp. Her health is doing much better. She is in a position to go out there and looking to make a statement. She's got an opponent who's been pretty active over the recent time. Does the proverbial conversation of ring rust factor in? Who knows? I guess that's what we get to see on Saturday. One thing that we know, though, about Macy Barber when she does fight is she brings violence. Sometimes it might be a little bit chaotic in the process and she'll take some shots. But what we do know for sure is that she is not afraid to go in there and, in a non-disrespectful way, make it ugly, if you will. To go in there, to get into tight spaces, to basically fight in a phone booth, throwing elbows, getting bloody, and seeing if you are willing to go to the dark waters with her. At one point, was someone who was on the outside looking in from a title shot. If she goes out there, has an impressive victory here, I could see her getting back into that top contention mix, but we've got to see what the time away does. Next fight from that, you've got a couple of guys who have some contrasting styles, but should make for, you know, an entertaining fight in the lightweight division. You've got Farazim, the French kickboxer, who's taking on Nazim Sadikov. Sadikov's a scrapper, man. That dude is an all-around fighter who I think, is going to have to figure out how to deal with the length of Zim. But should he be able to figure out the length, I think that it could be a good opportunity for him to go out there and push himself to 12-1-1 in his career. Following from that, you've got a couple of big boys, a couple more big boy fights on the card, but this one is Marvin Vettori, former title challenger, taking on Bruno Ferreira. Marvin Vettori isn't much of a finisher, but he's a brute. You got the "hey, you guys" sort of toughness, you know, Sloth from the Goonies sort of just get pounded on at times and be able to weather the storm and go out there and find a victory. Bruno Ferreira on the other side of things, that dude throws his hands like pistons. I mean, they're cannonballs shooting at you. I don't know that he's got the savvy or the prowess to be able to put Marvin Vettori away, But I do know the longer that he lets Marvin hang around, the more dangerous Marvin is going to become in that fight. Marvin's use of cage control, working some of his wrestling in the process. I think that that's Marvin's key to success, to be able to wear down and to take some of that steam away from Fajeda. We have another lightweight fight on the card. There's a lot of lightweights on this card being showcased. You have the return of Jalen Turner after his last fight during the springtime against Ignacio Bahamondes. He announced that he was retiring. Well, that retirement was pretty short-lived, but I also believe that, he's coming off of some frustrating losses, a little bit of soul searching. He's found some faith, says he's got rid of vices within his life. And I think that sometimes when you're just constantly in the mix of fight after fight after fight, or going camp to camp to camp, you're not really having a whole lot of growth necessarily, or you're not taking the time to let not just your body, but your mind. And I don't say it in the physical sense of letting your brain heal from the damage. I'm saying letting the mentals, the emotion, that part of who you are, your spirit, letting your spirit heal. Does Jalen Turner still have the ability to go out there and pull the trigger, proverbially speaking? That's what we need to see on Saturday. He's still young with a lot of time left in his career. Edson Barbosa on the other side, another vet who is only got a few fights left. I mean, when you look at Edson Barbosa, though, from the physical aspects, he still looks like he's prime condition. But when you start taking a look at, his face and the droop eye, the scarring, man, he's taken a lot of damage throughout his career. And the tarantula Jalen Turner being a 6'3" lightweight, that's a problem. That's a problem for a lot of guys to have to deal with. Edson Barbosa, though, a veteran of so many years within the UFC now at this stage, he's seen just about every wrinkle that you could throw at him. A mix of a young vet against a vet who is very long in the tooth. What do you guys think of this matchup, though? Do you think that this is the right move of Jalen Turner coming back out of the mix? Love to hear your thoughts on that. You could drop that on the chat, or you could hit me up on social media for that one as well. Just another fight to talk about here on the way out before we transition into our CJJC breakdown. Got to give another shout out to another Denver-based fighter who's on the card. You have Muhammad Naimov, who's taking on Myron Santos, opening up the card. Santos being an Ultimate Fighter guy. Muhammad Naimov, he trains at a high altitude when he's out here a lot, I believe. And yeah, they're opening up the card. Tune into the prelims. You might see a banger fight right there to start off the card at 145 pounds. Now, this weekend, as mentioned, we've got the CJJC 28 Grapple Party show going down at the Stampede. If you want a full in-depth breakdown for this show, check out the CJJC 28 breakout preview brought to you by Matt Ratz. That is on the CJJC YouTube page, where myself and Kat Paprocki went through a full breakdown of each of these matchups within the card. But just giving you a quick little rundown of what to expect for this weekend. On the early prelims, we've got the first couple of matches of our 4-man bracket to be determined as far as what the draw is for who those matchups are going to be. We've got our guys who are competing, but who is going to be going against who? That is going to be something that they're going to draw. And check that out on Saturday for more there. The first matchup, as far as guys who are on the schedule, we have a 125-pound no-gi matchup that is going to be going down between Ray Mendoza of DCO MMA against Martin Arenas from Factory X. That transitions us into the prelims. We have a 175-pound no-gi matchup from Langdon King, veteran of the CJJC cage, taking on CJ Chavez. King out of Logos, Chavez out of Genesis. After that, we've got Declan O'Brien and Quentin Button in a 200-pound no-gi matchup. We've got a flyweight matchup, 125-pound no-gi scrap between Michael Ortiz and Corey Labato. These are two teenagers who we've had on the show before, and I'll tell you what, the skill that these young men have is absolutely tremendous, especially considering what their age is. The speed, the transitions, the wherewithal, the acumen, and the efficacy of some of what they do out there, I'm impressed. I am excited to see these guys in the cage getting after it on Saturday. Following that, we've got a 130-pound no-gi matchup that is going down between Ray Maldonado of High Altitude Martial Arts. He's taking on Cameron Santos of Catalyst BJJ. Cameron Santos' last show that he competed with us at the tattoo convention, not only did Catalyst show up very well, which they always do and support their guys. Shout out to Professor Paul Hamas and the crew up there. But he had an entire section of the crowd that was just for him, not all the collective Catalyst crew. That was in addition to. So when you have someone who has that many people bought in around them, then that typically means that they're also bought in on the process themselves, and they're putting in the work to try to achieve the goals that they're seeking. I'm excited to see this matchup. You have a 140-pound matchup going down between Caden Ashby, also of Catalyst. He's going to be taking on Seth Tumbleson of Factory X and Evergreen Jiu-Jitsu. Two young, hungry, skilled grapplers. Seth Tumbleson has competed on multiple rule sets for us, whether it's grapple games or in the CJJC cage. He's had a tech sub before, which was impressive. I mean, he was slick to grab the neck, and he had his opponent making memes right away. Following that matchup, we're going to have the bracket consolation match. Then we're going to have a 130-pound gi matchup between Junior Zamora of High Altitude taking on Desideo Belfont of Catalyst. Then we've got, rounding out the prelims, a 150-pound no-gi matchup between a longtime veteran of the CJJC cage across multiple different sets again, whether it is our full-on grapple shows to grapple games. Anthony Bendy of DCO, he's taken on Darren Hilton, which moves us into the main card. We've got the bracket championship with some cash on the line. Then following that, we've got a 145-pound no-gi matchup between Tyree Woolfork of AMAG. He is taking on John Sparks of Evergreen Jiu-Jitsu. We've got a 195-pound no-gi matchup with Ben Bennett of High Altitude Martial Arts. Ben Bennett, friend of the program. We've had him on here a few times. Ben is an MMA fighter. He's had bare knuckle fights. He just loves to scrap no matter what it is. The kid is a tremendous athlete. He's a great personality. Some of his promo that he's done for this card and for this matchup, you can't not watch it and be entertained. Check out Mr. Alaska on Instagram, and you'll see some of that great promo work that he's done. He's taken on Silas Armetta out of Evergreen Jiu-Jitsu. Shout out to Professor Scotty. He's always got guys who are very skilled whenever they're going out there to compete. Following that, there's a 155-pound no-gi matchup. This is a couple of vets as well from the CJJC cage. You have Alexa Johnson out of AMAG, who has taken on Alexandra Anderson out of the Sanctuary. Alexandra had a crazy triangle submission in her last outing with us, so I'm looking forward to see what her follow-up effort is there. And Alexa Johnson, tremendous story, tremendous journey throughout her martial arts path. Then we're going to get to our feature bout of the day. This one, you've got some fireworks all over it. You've got one guy who's bringing a big name to the table, given what his family history is, so on and so forth. I mean, I'm looking at a artistic rendition of his brother right over here in front of me in the Mile High Sports Studio. You've got Zach Lindsay out of DCO taking on Jason Mullen of Factory X. Jason Mullen is a guy who has a lot of MMA fights, a lot of pro MMA fights, ton of submissions on his record, also a considerable amount of experience in the submission grappling world. Zach Lindsay is a rising athlete within the combat sports world, has competed multiple times in the CJJC cage as well as other grappling tournaments, also has MMA fights underneath his belt. He is the brother of one Philip Lindsay. So again, he's going to have a lot of people there in attendance. He's going to bring a ton of energy because of the crowd that he has out there in the mix. His brother Marcus also fights and has competed in the cage for us on CJJC. But Jason Mullen he's a guy who just, again, sometimes vets just have wrinkles up their sleeve and they've got a lot of tools that they bring to the table. And yeah, I'm really excited for what that matchup brings on Saturday, because you have two very contrasting styles. You have Jason as a martial artist, and you have Zach, who is very much an athlete, former college running back. And then in the co-main, you have a 145-pound no-gi matchup between Alejandro the Hurricane Rodriguez out of Black Sheep Universe MMA down in Colorado Springs, taking on Tyler Hampton of Paxuco. And then in the main event, you have Logan Weintraub of Easton Training Center, who has taken on UFC veteran in Cody Brundage, training out of Factory X. Should be a great show, ladies and gentlemen. I'm really excited for the show overall. I've said excited a bunch of times, but there is a loaded card. I'm pretty sure we're basically almost at capacity. Only a few tickets left for the entire show. If you have the opportunity, come out and check it out. Or if you want to watch from the comfort of your home or wherever it is that you're at, you can watch this show on the CJJC YouTube page. We're going to have weigh-ins available to the public on Friday as well. I believe we're kicking that off at 11:30 as far as official face-offs going. So if you want to check that out, that's going to be at the Ugly Dog Sports Cafe right up off of 36th. Good little thing to come and check out. You know, again, your support of our local combat sports events allows for us to continue to do what we do, and we greatly appreciate your support and your fellowship in the process. Transitioning now to Curtsy's Corner. We've had a bunch of announcements for these first couple of Paramount cards in 2026. Some of them have drawn praise. A lot of them have brought some backlash from the fans and from others involved within the sport. Now, first off, in some aspects, I can understand your criticisms. I get it. But there's also the business aspect. And that's where I think that some people might not necessarily understand where the promotion may be coming from or the number side of things. I've had a couple of great conversations with some people who I highly respect in the game, who are much on the purest side of martial arts. And from a pure meritocratic standpoint, I get what you're saying. From a pure meritocratic standpoint, some of these matchups or the proposed interim title fight and whatnot, and a title fight at 145, yeah, I get where your criticisms are coming. But there's a lot of people, though, or the masses, if you will, who complained big time at the UFC 322 main event and co-main event where Islam Makhachev and Valentina Shevchenko were accused of being boring. To play devil's advocate to you, I believe that some of these announced matchups could be in direct response to that backlash for those. So sometimes it's almost a thing of nobody hates MMA more than MMA fans. You're never going to be pleased, never going to be happy. But we'll take a look at a couple of these here. You have the UFC 324 card, the first card for Paramount, that's going to be headlined by Justin Gaethje taking on Patty the Batty Pimblett. This is going to be for the interim lightweight belt. We're going to talk a little bit more on why this is an interim title a little bit later on in the program. Now, I totally understand. I already said it earlier in the show. Arman is the number one contender technically. I don't know if Arman would be able to make the turnaround with the weight cut and everything that quickly. You know, he has a considerable amount of time, 8 weeks from when that fight happened, basically. I'm pretty sure it was 8 weeks. Maybe even a little longer if I'm not mistaken. But from the original Paramount promo that was just released, all signs were pointing to this fight being aimed for a Patty Pimblett against Ilya Topuria fight. That is, given what their history is, the dust-up that they had at the hotel a couple of years ago, when they were both in Qatar for the card a couple of weeks ago, they had security presence around them the entire time. Even ESPN and ESPN MMA both posted on their social media the run-in that they had. I mean, they were like, 30 yards away from each other with security, making sure that they didn't even get close. Really kind of a non-thing to report, but just enough to kind of stir the pot and keep the public interest of that feud, if you will. But given that Ilya is not available right now at the moment, again, more on that in a minute, sliding in Justin Gaethje is never a bad idea. Putting Justin Gaethje in any matchup, especially putting Justin Gaethje in a title fight opportunity, you are guaranteed entertainment value. You are guaranteed to have someone who is going out there to kill or be killed, chasing a finish, chasing a bonus, and embodying his namesake of the human highlight reel. You can't go wrong whenever you insert Justin Gaethje into that discussion. The winner is then obviously the interim champion who would be set to fight Ilya upon his return to action. And I do get that kind of hoses Armand to wait for another title shot until around Q3, Q4 of 2026. But let us also not forget that Armand did have a title shot at the beginning of this year against Islam Makhachev, and he blew it like a streetwalker on Colfax. He missed weight and had to pull out at the 11th hour, which is what got Moicano inserted into that title fight on short notice, on less than a day's notice. He broke the UFC's trust. And once you're on the UFC's bad list, it's really tough to get off of it. And more so, it's just his natural personality. But Armand just kind of acts like a dildo whenever he has the opportunity. I mean, the headbutt to Dan Hooker at the face-off, that alone could have compromised that fight even being able to happen. Dan Hooker said that his nose cracked in the process. I mean, he put the crown of his forehead right onto Dan Hooker's big honker. If Dan Hooker would have, had a bad enough injury, the fight doesn't happen. You just removed yourself from another opportunity, Armand. And Armand said that, he wasn't planning on getting crazy, but he just, his words, not mine, just couldn't control himself and got lost in the moment. You got to be better than that. Got to have more composure. Next fight on the card, you've got Kayla Harrison, who's going to be defending her women's bantamweight title against Amanda Nunes, coming back in her return fight. How can you miss this one? I like this fight being made. You have the consensus 135-pound GOAT and Amanda Nunes making her return to fight a former training partner who was what all reports said was the reason why she left ATT, because of Kayla's rise and Kayla's attention that she was getting. Another grudge match. That sells. Love it. You've got Sean O'Malley and Yadong Song in an interesting styles clash. If I'm Song, I'm wrestling right away. I'm not letting the Sugar Show get into any sort of rhythm on the feet or letting him stay at range. And then you've also got Derek Lewis taking on Waldo Cortez Acosta, and that has a knockout potential on either side. Derek Lewis with the most knockouts in UFC history with 16. And you've got Salsa Boy riding into the fight, coming off of 2 knockout wins. When we take a look at UFC 325 with the Volk versus Diego rematch, the first edition was a fight of the year contender. I get on the cards that a lot of people thought that it was a 4-1 clip for Volk, but Diego did have his moments. And Diego is always someone who is going to pursue a finish. He brings the fight every single time. And according to Volk, that's the message that was relayed to him from the UFC, as opposed to the other potential contenders that he could have fought. And again, I get that some people saying him getting the rematch after one fight beating Gene Silva is a little bit premature. I understand what you're saying from a meritocratic standpoint. But from a business perspective, I can also understand why Diego's getting the fight for a couple of reasons. First, the UFC, straight up, no other way to say it, they like him. He does a lot of promo for the company. He's a megastar in Brazil and in Mexico, so he brings in a lot of eyes. The promo stuff that he does, the work that he does for the other fighters within his camp, him going around to fights and making these appearances, being there for certain activations and promotions for the company. And he's got the Jason House factor working for him. It's no mistake why he is getting this fight. Also, when you look at it from the business and the numbers driven perspective, Paramount Plus just inked a $7.7 billion deal, and the promo that they dropped gave the notion that they're going heavy on storylines and entertainment. They want some ROI with banger fights on their first couple of cards to usher in their Paramount streaming era. The other two options that could have been there for Volk to fight would have been Movsar Evloev or Lerone Murphy. Outside of the Pico fight, Lerone is a decisionator. And from an awareness perspective, two people know who Lerone Murphy is and less know about Movsar. Neither one of them can finish a wank. Also on that card, just want to shout out my boys, Dustin Jacoby, as well as Cody Brunners are going to be on that card. But, folks, that takes us all the way to our final segment of the show. First of all, though, let us know what you think as far as those Paramount matchups or anything that you have for this weekend's card. Let me know. I'm interested in what you have to say or about the CJJC Grapple Party card. If you're going to be in attendance, hey, come and say hi. Love to be able to make that connection with you. That's me at Comments from the Peanut Gallery on social media. Love to hear from you there. Now, going into 3 rounds, got my man Danny Bailey behind the boards. First round, what do we have?
UFC lightweight champ Ilia Topuria is out until Q2 2026 or later. What are your thoughts?
Ilia, unfortunately, is going through a messy divorce and what is sounding to be a pretty nasty custody battle going on right now. You know, they say hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. Something that the Nelk boys may have actually gotten right. They told him, well, you can't find your wife in Miami. And we talked about that right here on the program when Ilia kind of put the power to them when they had their little, play sparring session. But I guess they might have been a little bit onto something there as it turns. So yeah, it's a tough thing for Ilia, but it's something that he's going through. He didn't say directly in his post, but he did say, guys, I'm not going to be fighting right now. And at least through Q1, I'm going through a very tough time in my personal life and trying to get those ducks in a row. There was a lot of people who criticized him for it or gave him some backlash. Well, my counterpoint to that is Ilia has been pretty active throughout the course of his career. And also, he's human. He's going through some things. The demons and the battles that he's probably going through, just from a legal perspective and through litigation and court and whatnot, through the proceedings of the marital collapse and the custody situation, along with just some of those demons manifesting themselves of, well, now, you're not spending all the time with your child like you once were, or this life that you thought that you had crafted with a family and so on and so forth. And he's still young too. Keep in perspective that he's still in his 20s. That rug has now been pulled out from underneath him. As a champion, I give him a little bit of grace to be able to handle these affairs, to go out there and to settle the dust a little bit. Not to say that it's going to be the outcome that he wishes for or that he wants, but if he doesn't have to absolutely go out there or be pressed in a position to where he needs to take a fight amidst all of this turmoil, we've said it many a times on the program. Coach Mark Montoya he's always said that to us at Factory X, that you can't be a champion in the cage until you're a champion in life. Well, right now, he's got a lot of fires that are burning outside of the cage, and sometimes those demons rear their ugly heads and manifest themselves in the cage when you're not being able to devote your attention to what your craft is. I actually applaud Ilia for being able to have, call for what you will, the wherewithal to say, you know what, I'm not in a right space to go and do this right now. I guess that give him some grace on that, folks.
Real American Freestyle 3 had a successful show over the weekend, and a reaction.
I thought it was tremendous. I think that having the growth of wrestling the way that it has been on a bigger platform level the last couple of years is a big step for the sport to continue to grow in popularity. Studies have shown right now that the fastest growing sport in America is women's wrestling. But having some big names from just the wrestling world itself, along with some guys who were former collegiate wrestlers, former Team USA to whatever other level competitors who are getting on these cards and bringing their name value, the eyes, the reach, so on and so forth that they've had. Some of these guys have even been champions in major MMA organizations, have fought for UFC titles, so on and so forth. You have former college wrestlers like Michael Chandler, Chad Mendez, Clay Guida, Spencer Lee was on the card. Spencer Lee didn't get the win, but Spencer Lee is a massive name within the wrestling community. Pat Downey, PD3, that's a guy who he kind of got hosed by Team USA and by some of their quote unquote virtue signalers back in the day with that opportunity for competing for Team USA. But, his run on these wrestling cards or these grappling shows, it's been tremendous over the last couple of years. And he's a fun guy to watch. He's entertaining. He pulls no punches. He is very authentic about who he is. A lot of the guys from the wrestling community, you'll see them, especially some of that Penn State crowd, they'll virtue signal, they've got their verses. They act like they're clean and mighty, which a lot of them are, but there's also some we've seen from actual legal situations that are not as pure as they play off. On the flip side, you got Pat Downey, who's going to go out there and he's going to smoke a blunt right there on camera. And he's going to say like, hey, you know what? This is who I am. Deal with it. And he took on Joaquin Buckley, who was a short notice fill-in, Bukamedov, if you will. That's what Joaquin Buckley is calling himself for his wrestling alter ego. He got teched right away, but I have to give him credit for being willing to step in there against somebody who has the credentials and the pedigree within the wrestling world that PD3 does. And he says that, you know what? I would love to run that back with a full camp. The exchange that they had after the matchup, it was kind of wholesome, actually, in the sense where Pat Downey said, hey, you know what? For your next fight, if you want, I'll come out there and I'll give you a camp's worth of work to help you prepare and to get your wrestling better. And then Buckley said, well, hey, I would love that, but let's not get it twisted. I would also love to run this back with you. Give me more than 2 weeks to have this wrestling match, and I would love to run it back. I don't think that you could give Joaquin Buckley 3 years worth of a camp. Send him Dagestan 2-3 years to forget. He's still not going to beat Pat Downey in a wrestling match. But I love the competitive spirit. I love that Buckley is willing to now make himself be uncomfortable or, get comfortable with these environments where he has had a bit of a lack as far as his actual MMA game. We saw that in the fight against Kamaru Usman, but he's addressing where those flaws are. Got to give credit where credit's due. We've talked a lot of smack about Buckley throughout the years and some of his antics, but his willingness to humble himself and to take the lessons and to grow in the process, that is something to marvel at, in my opinion. Then on the flip side, you had a couple of very big names within the women's wrestling world. Now, a young and rising competitor out there, and she didn't get her hand raised, but she's got a lot of hype behind her, especially given what her last name is and who her father was. You have Bella Mir, still extremely young, but very talented. And eventually, I would totally imagine that we're going to see Bella Mir transition in to more submission grappling events as well as into MMA as the time grows forward. And then you had the pinnacle of women's wrestling stars right now. I mean, in my opinion, and maybe the wrestling community out there, you could chime in and you can correct me, but I believe that the biggest star in the world right now for women's wrestling is Kennedy Blades. Kennedy Blades is a flat out stud. Won it all for the U.S. at the last Olympics, was a national champion at Iowa this last season, and she went out there and she captured the belt for RAF. A next RAF card, though, for you guys to look forward to, just to give you a teaser, you're going to have Yoel Romero going against Bo Nickel. Bo Nickel put up a post of him in, I believe, him in 2000, where he's just a little kid in his youth wrestling singlet and his little pose. And what Yoel Romero was doing in 2000, which Yoel Romero was wrestling in the finals at the Olympics. So we're seeing a pretty considerable age gap and difference there, but I love it. I love the willingness for those guys to go out there and compete in that sense. And with that, final round.
Ronda Rousey is in talks with Katie Taylor for a boxing fight next year. What are your thoughts?
First and foremost, I told you Ronda's making a comeback. I didn't necessarily foresee that it would be in a pure boxing sort of scenario, but the interest in the bout has been confirmed by Katie Taylor, and that was from a report out of Boxing Scene. Again, I don't know if it's a good thing for Ronda to jump directly back into the combat sports world and competing in a pure striking fight, where the joke for many years was that, you know, if you watch Ronda shadow box, the shadow won. But she has been working on that part of her game. You know, you saw her in a couple of interviews over the last couple of weeks, especially the one that we referenced at one point, or that we talked about with Burt Kreischer, where you know that she's striking. She had a black eye throughout the entirety of the interview. I know that she's been putting in some work with a very respected and decorating striking coach and guys like AJ Matthews. She's been working with a lot of the MMA girls out there in Las Vegas. I know that she's been in the gym and putting in a lot of work. What does that mean as far as where she's at for a pure boxing matchup? I don't know. But if this is an opportunity for the two of them to go out there and get a bag, hey, I'm all for it. So be it. But real quick, folks, just want to share one last message for you before we head out for the week. As we approach in the holiday season, it's not all Yuletide and cheer for everybody out there. There's a lot of folks right now that are going through it. Maybe you've dealt with some losses. There's been some adversity in your life. If you have the opportunity, be kind. Check on your friends. You never know what that little bit of a, hey man, just wanted to say what's up. You know, don't need anything from you. Just wanted to reach out and say, you know, looking out for you, or love you, bro, whatever it may be. You never know how far that is going to go for your fellow human out there. So just think of that when it comes to the holiday season, that again, it's not all Yuletide and cheer for everybody out there. Check on your friends. But just like that, folks, we are all out of time. That wraps it up for another week of original combat sports programming here at the MMA Plug on Mile High Sports. We're coming to you from the number 38 presented by Volo. If you have the chance, come and check us out this weekend at the Stampede for CJJC 28 Grapple Party. Check out the full pre-show breakout that is at the CJJC YouTube page. We're also going to have a pre-show going down. Might have a big guest. Don't want to uncork the bottle on that one just yet until we have it absolutely locked in and confirmed, but he may or may not have already been mentioned on this program. Guys, just want to say once again, thank you so much for your support of our combat sports programming here, as well as coming out and showing your support for our events. I want to give a big thank you to the Mile High Sports crew as a whole, and especially my man, Danny Bailey. If you have the chance, come down here, check out the number 38, pick up some merch. I'm Jordan Kurtz. You can give me a follow along online at Comments from the Peanut Gallery. We will be back next week, same time, same place. We'll see you then.